All right, Nick, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Big win this week, and they are looking at potential playoff aspirations. There's a lot of stuff going on, but the big showdown into the season versus the Baltimore Ravens, that is going to be the key. And some interesting news from Mike Tomlin, rather lack of news from Mike Tomlin about the game. Let's get into the article, and we can talk about it on the other side. It says, Steelers are still fighting for a playoff berth as they head into the regular season finale Saturday against the Ravens. And as of right now, they're not saying who their starting quarterback will be. Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin declined to answer reporters' questions about whether Mason Rudolph, who has led Pittsburgh to back-to-back wins, will start on Saturday in Baltimore. We'll talk about that next week. Right now, we're just appreciative of the victory and we'll give you guys something to buzz about, Tomlin said. Rudolph has played very well, significantly better than Kenny Pickett before he was hurt or Mitchell Trubisky when he filled in for Pickett. But Tomlin was muted in the discussion of how Rudolph played in Sunday's win over the Seahawks. He said, I thought he did a nice job. Realistically, it's hard to believe Tomlin doesn't see Rudolph as his best quarterback to beat the Ravens, but he isn't saying so yet. This, of course, is over on NBC Sports. But, Nick, I think this is really interesting because any leg up you can get, and we're being honest, the Ravens are probably going to bench a lot of starters. They've got the first seed locked up. They've got the first round bye locked up. They've won the division. There's no reason. So the Steelers have a very good chance. And knowing Ravens-Steelers football, if anyone is familiar, I know all the Steelers fans are, this game can go any way no matter who is playing. I don't care if you were the number one all-best world team and the Ravens were the absolute worst team in the NFL. Any one of these teams can win on any day. It feels like it's just an absolute slobber knocker. So interesting that Tomlin uses this lack of information as potentially a little bit of an air of mystery, potentially a little bit leg up against the Ravens. I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this news, Nick. But Steelers fans, let us know in the comments below. Big game this coming weekend on Saturday. What do you think the final score is versus Baltimore? Let us know in the comment section below. But Nick, what do you think about all this for the Steelers?
Yeah, so I think there's two aspects of this that make it a really smart decision by Tomlin by having the air of mystery. Number one, I think, is what you brought up. The Ravens are likely trying to figure out what players they want to rest against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so obviously the Ravens, instead of spending their time game planning and trying to figure out what they're going to do against the Steelers in terms of, situations, play calls, play design, things like that, they're worried about resting their own personnel. So there's obviously going to be a little bit of a distracted element to Baltimore to begin with. And then you throw in a little bit air of mystery, is Kenny Pickett going to come back and start? Is it going to be Rudolph? It just throws another wrench into Baltimore's game planning preparation, which is another advantage for Pittsburgh on top of course, Baltimore resting some guys. So again, this is just an opportunity by Tomlin and a smart one, right? All you want to do is introduce just a little bit of mystery because Rudolph and Pickett are stylistically very different quarterbacks. It just forces more effort on Mike McDonald outside of trying to figure out who's going to play for his own team, trying to figure out what his game plan is going to be against potentially both quarterbacks of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But there's another element to this that I think is really smart. Mason Rudolph has come in and played exceptionally well. If you look at the two starts, he was 17 of 27 for 290 against Cincinnati with 2 scores. And then, of course, yesterday against Seattle, 18 of 24 for 274. He has a QBR so far this season in his 2+ starts of 71.8. That is really, really good. I think the point here, though, that Tomlin's trying to make is he doesn't. I think the Steelers team, and namely Rudolph, is better when they have a chip on their shoulder, right? When they're not the overdog, when they're not the big guy on the block. He wants to have Rudolph play with that edge and have that competitiveness that he showed against Cincinnati, where he saved the Steelers season. Then, of course, their big win against the Seahawks. I think he's also doing this to give Rudolph, hey, you got another chip on your shoulder. You're not guaranteed the starting job, even though I think everyone is expecting beyond a 99% certainty that Rudolph will start the rest of the way for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's trying to have Rudolph keep that chip on his shoulder here a little bit. And again, I think that's when Rudolph plays the best. So I think it's a smart move by Tomlin, no matter how you look at it, two ways. It's a great decision with this announcement.
Yeah, Nick, and I think it's just, like you said, keeping that air of mystery, keeping Rudolph on his toes, keeping him on the chip on his shoulder. We're not sure if you're going to start yet or not. Keep him fired up that he wants to be the leader of this offense, which I think, like you said, he's done absolutely phenomenal in the last 2 games. This offense has looked much more explosive. George Pickens has been an absolute animal, getting almost 200 yards in that first game. This is a Steelers team that is much improved with Mason Rudolph at the helm, but I think it's very obvious they probably go with Rudolph, but the lack of just saying it up front, saying, you know, letting the Tomlin goes, all right, I'll let the media buzz about it a little bit. I think this was really good move by Tomlin just to kind of keep that chip on the shoulder, like you said, get this Steelers team coming in and try to win themselves into a playoff victory. This is a really big game for them, and I'm excited to see how it all plays out this coming weekend.
Yeah, and speaking how it's going to play out, I know it's early, right, celebrating the big win, but looking at the NFL playoff machine, according to ESPN, Steelers fans, you obviously have to beat the Baltimore Ravens. I think you guys have to be the biggest Tennessee Titan fans of all time. I think the Texans Colts game, it doesn't matter. Whoever wins that one has the advantage over Pittsburgh. And then you have the Jaguars Titans game. So if the Jaguars beat the Tennessee Titans, they have the advantage over Pittsburgh. They're in. Whoever wins over Colts and the Texans is in as well. So the only game outside of your own game Saturday that you have to worry about is the Jaguars Titans game. You are huge Tennessee Titan Mike Vrabel fans. We'll see how it works out. But again, I think, like you said, this is a good opportunity, a really kind of smart move after the win to give them just an early advantage as they jump into a must-win game against Baltimore.